Well, let's talk about the original plan for Survivor Series. It's written here that the original plan was Lesnar versus Hogan, but Hogan is refusing to put Lesnar over a second time. And they have a meeting where the two leading candidates to put Lesnar over wound up either being Big Show or Benoit. And Meltzer would say, when Vince panics, they go with size.
Yep.
I would have liked to have seen Hogan, Lesnar. Bruce felt like, we recently talked about this, that at this point, the audience would not have believed that Hogan was a real threat for Lesnar.
I agree.
Okay.
Brucey's right on that one, I believe.
Yeah.
You might squeeze the old proverbial one off.
Right.
But I agree with that. It's just that ship had sailed, in my view.
So the next week on Raw, we get November 4th, and you describe it as more conservative. Batista's now on Raw as Dave Batista. He's going to defeat Justin Credible. Did you feel like he was a blue chipper early, or is he somebody you warmed up to and came around on?
The latter.
Yeah.
I like Dave a lot, and Dave was a popular guy in the locker room area, kind of quiet at times, withdrawn. And then he started coming out of his proverbial shell, if that's a good term. I don't know if it is or not. But his look, he's 6'4", 6'5", he looked like a Greek god. And he had a thirst for learning. He wanted to get better. He wanted to be on that level of Triple H and Shawn and all those cats. So, but I always thought he had great unlimited potential. It was just simply a matter, and you can't judge this. You can't predict it. How good can you get? How good will you be in a year? How hard are you going to push yourself to be different and be better? But I always say he always had the work ethic, and he wasn't afraid of challenges and exploring things. I think that may be one of the reasons that he's been such a success, almost off the radar, so to speak, I should say, in movies. He's adapted. He's a very popular guy to work with on a movie set. So I like Dave. I like Dave. Tough guy. Was he the smoothest? Was he Dory Jr.? No, but he was a hell of a hand, and he got better and better. That's the great thing about it, is that before he completely burned out, he got to be a pretty damn good wrestler.
No doubt about it. He's going to go on to become quite the sports entertainer. We're given an opportunity to Trish and Victoria here. It's announced that they're going to have a hardcore match for Survivor Series. So Victoria is playing like a psycho movie character. And listen, here's the reality. No matter what you think of this creative, it is a departure. Up until this point, the ladies had primarily only been on pay-per-view in some sort of a bra and panties type match. So this is at least a step in the right direction. And who better than Victoria and Trish, right?
Yeah, they had good chemistry. They both were willing to help each other. Good continuity in that respect. Victoria's probably one of the more underrated, off the radar hands. She's big and big. I don't say it's hard to. You got to be careful how you say this as far as female athletes. She was strong. She had a great stature, and she worked her ass off so hard. And that's a lot. She did some great things coming from where she was as one of Godfather's hoes,
right,
to becoming a champion. So I always admired that for her work ethic. But she and Trish had good chemistry, and unlike some of the guys at times, they seem to be on the same page regarding selling, being, sharing the ring, sharing spotlight, and that type of thing. So it was a good chemistry for them, and I'm glad they got that shot. It led to a lot of things for women in WWE and beyond.
So Jim, before we get back into Survivor Series, because we're almost there, I want to talk about a couple more pieces of news and notes. Randy Orton is going to barge in on some of the programming here with the RNN update. It's a funny concept, but it does eventually feel like we're kind of out of things for him to talk about. I appreciate that looking back at this 20 years ago, we get to see these stars in various states of their career growth. You know, we see Cena rapping for the first time. We're seeing Batista not wrestling as Deacon Batista, but wrestling as Dave Batista for the first time.
Right.
And Randy Orton, the RNN news update, we're trying to show different sides of his personality. Did you think that was the right fit for him, or is it just one of those things where when you got a new guy, you just got to try some things?
Well, it didn't click to me,
Yeah.
which means nothing other than this personally. I didn't think it was the best thing we could have done for Randy, but it was worth a try, because if it had gotten over, then I'd be singing a different song here right now. But I didn't think it fit Randy real well. It was a failed attempt to find something for him to do that was positive and productive. I don't think that was the answer.
What is positive and productive is Mysterio and Edge beating Angle and Benoit to win the tag titles on SmackDown. They go nearly 25 minutes, and folks really loved it. This is where we start to see the SmackDown 6 form over on SmackDown. Ray and Edge, Angle, Benoit, the Guerreros, just some really good wrestling. Contrast that to some of the silly storytelling we've got over on Monday Night Raw. And you would even take to the Ross Report and say that Raw is trying to find the correct balance between steak and sizzle, which, if you understand JR speak, means we got a lot of horse shit over there, but hang tight, we're working on it.
Well, that's pretty close now. I'd say that's accurate.
Yeah. You would also note in your Ross Report that our old pal Gerald Briscoe's headed down to the Kurt Angle Classic, and he's going to be tagging along with Angle and Brock Lesnar, trying to scout some new talent. It's also noted in your report that Terry Taylor is now an agent for Raw, working with a lot of the talent before the show starts, along with Arn Anderson. And you report that WWE's hired Rip Rogers as a coach to start working down in OVW. I think everybody listening to this is pretty familiar with Terry Taylor and Arn Anderson, but maybe some of our listeners aren't too familiar with Rip Rogers. What can you tell us about Rip, and why was he the right guy to join up for OVW here?
Well, when you talk about trainers, one name pops in my head first. That's Tom Pritchard, who was a hell of a trainer. Dory Jr. was a hell of a trainer. But Rip Rogers is a little different animal. He came from, he worked in territories back in the day, but he is so fundamentally sound. I'd put him in one of the top 2 or 3 spots on my personal list of guys that train wrestlers, even to this day. If you get under his learning tree, if you're a wrestler, you want to be a wrestler, you'll be making a good move. So he was very underrated, maybe, but boy, he did a great job for us, teaching guys the basic fundamentals with no bullshit, no nonsense, and just a hard-working guy. So he's made his mark. He's got his niche now in the wrestling business, and that being one of the top trainers in the world.